But I will tell you, our next speaker, JB, it's foodie. So in his words, I eat SaaS for breakfast, B2B sales for lunch, and AI data for dinner. You can do it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. One big round of applause for JB. Woohoo!
Thank you.
Are you hungry for knowledge?
Great. So thank you. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. So a few words about myself. So my name is JB. This stands for Jean-Baptiste. I'm French originally. And well, already it was shared that I'm a foodie, so I like my food spicy. That's kind of what I eat every day. And a bit of background. So I helped more than 100 companies go to market, from 5K MRR to hundreds of millions in ARR. And I kind of fell with the B2B SaaS. I kind of fell in love with the B2B SaaS model with a company called Trustpilot. I was the fourth salesperson that they hired in the team. And over a period of 2 years, we went from 50 to 5,000 customers. In these 2 years, I brought 600 customers myself. So it was almost one customer per day. I was highly motivated for 2 reasons. The first reason is my previous company went bankrupt. And it was in the e-commerce space, and I was talking, it was 13 years ago, so I was talking to e-commerce entrepreneurs and e-commerce web marketers that were actually very successful at what I basically failed. So it was just very interesting for me, and I had these really genuine conversations with these people, and I didn't feel like I was selling. Second reason, they had uncapped commission plan. So I was able to basically pay all my debts in 2 years instead of 8 years. And fast forward, so I became debt-free. I moved to Lithuania and Vilnius, where I started working with the first VC in the country. And then they were basically investing in early-stage entrepreneur. And my job was to help their portfolio company to basically go to market. And that's when I took the Trustpilot playbook and I basically implemented it with quite a few other companies and so on and so forth. Fast forward, we turned this business into a consulting business and started to consult early stage companies and grew with some larger stage company and whatnot. And that's also when I realized that doing early stage GTM consulting is a shitty business. Because essentially, you work with companies that are very early stage, and 8 or 9 times out of 10 it's not going to work. And when it works, you crack the most important part of their growth journey, which is the GTM, right? And no matter how much you invoice, you created way more value. So we actually spin off the same playbook consulting into an investment fund / accelerator, where we had 8 million euro and we were investing in early stage startups, and they could only spend our money in sales. And then we will help them to implement the playbook and eventually take some sweat equity for the acceleration if they reach a certain level of monthly revenue. So we did that 60 times. We recruited and trained more than 350 salespeople for the portfolio. And so far we have 6 exits. No unicorn yet, but some really nice liquidity. And everything was really cruising until November 23, where AI killed the old Evergrowth consulting business, where we had actually 70 people helping sales team with outsourced research team to kind of build like very, customer-centric playbook with all the research. And we basically, over a weekend, created an AI agent that was able to reproduce 1 week of research in 20 minutes. And we had 70 people doing the research. So we had this aha moment and what the fuck moment at the same time, because it was pretty clear that the business is dead. And fast forward January 24, so last year, we raised $2.5 million USD from investors that we know very well and started building the platform. We released the very first version of the agentic platform in April last year. So as a platform agentic business, we are 1 year old. And so today we are, hello? No problem. So today, yeah, we are 16 people and we have 42 agents in our team, right? So meaning like we have 42 digital colleagues that we work with every day to kind of work with our sales funnel. And I think that's really how the future of companies are going to look like tomorrow, where you have very lean team and a lot of AI agents in the team. And fun fact about myself, I grew up in the part of France where we grow all the baguettes on the croissant. And people don't believe me, but these are real pictures of my childhood. Running in the baguette field, and when I will get tired, I'll pick up a croissant from a croissant tree and just keep on running, right? So totally legit. Now, reality check about the GTM funnel. So if you look at the different channels that we have been using, right? So when I started selling in the late 2000s, phone was the main channel. People thought I was a genius because I was guessing email address of people based on their LinkedIn profile. It's kind of given, right? But the big difference that happened in the shift in the market here is, I don't know if some of you remember the book from Aaron Ross called The Predictable Revenue, but he was basically the one that really made this specialized sales team model more popular, where you had SDRs that were basically booking meetings and like also the cold email channel. But the big difference back then is that salespeople were information holder. There was no content marketing, there was no like, inbound marketing team and whatnot. So buyers had to listen to salespeople to access information. And that's not the case anymore. So that's one thing that changed. Obviously, data became a commodity as well. So remember back in the days when we say data is gold, big data and all of this kind of stuff? It's over. Everybody is using the same data. Everybody can find the email address or the phone number of the CMO of whatever companies nowadays, right? So data became commoditized, and when COVID hit, basically email became flooded because people could not call anymore to different kind of people and whatnot because they were not working from the office anymore, right? And we didn't have yet technologies to find the mobile phone number, so people kind of doubled down on emails. And then you also had this generation gap of sales talent that came to the market that did not grow up with a landline, right? So I mean, the generation of sales talent that basically doesn't have the phone icon on their phone, that didn't know how to use the phone as a tool to kind of call people, that had basically doubled down on email, right? But the buyers, on the other hand, they were the landline generations. So anyway, we had this over kind of amount of noise on the email channel, on the LinkedIn channel, and AI so far, let's be honest, has done more damage than anything good to the sales profession, right? Because you have these cool kids that are sending you a poem based on where you went to high school, and they call it an icebreaker, right? And that's just not helping us to kind of break through the noise as the sales profession. So this Gen AI also, if you look at where we are today versus where we were back in beginning of 24, I think we are way more fluent in understanding when some Gen AI content is generated than when it was in 23 or beginning of 24. So people are not stupid and they see it. And obviously, Google and Microsoft, they had to update their new spam policy because their users are just getting flooded with spam, right? So that's kind of the reality here. And we have a way to train the new generation of salespeople to be comfortable on the phone and pick up on the phone. That's the most effective channel. And the other channels, you still need to be even more relevant than before and not put people into some canned automations, right? So that's kind of the reality check. And what used to work is at the beginning, when we had reps that were doing the full sales cycle and were training reps to kind of replicate what they were doing with the SDR, it used to work. When we had very, very targeted account-based marketing campaign, it also used to work. When we had very driven ICP or ideal buyer persona, that's what IBP stands for, processes, it used to work. We used to get results. This was like really qualitative type of approach. And then we had positive CAC. This was great. But what happened is we went so much into this specialization of our sales team, and then we had a generation of SDRs that never closed deals or never kind of saw a demo that trained another generation of SDRs, and we basically lost the knowledge about who is the customer, right? Then we started to automate as much as possible because data was getting cheap, and it was very easy to kind of press a button and send some hundreds or thousands of cold emails. And obviously, we became tools-driven. We have a generation of salespeople that are button clickers, right? Instead of being, very customer-centric, understanding what their customers and whatnot. So that's kind of a big problem. And obviously, we had negative CAC. So when you have negative CAC, you obviously need to kind of cut costs. And if you want to look at it like from that perspective, sales is a two-way street. You have the prospect and you have the salesperson, right? And we have been focusing so much on the salesperson, where we're like, okay, let's use a bunch of tools, let's turn prospect into emails, let's copy-paste templates from the internet, and then let's just send everything away. On the other hand, you had the buyers. They are not stupid. They can sit there in the canned campaigns, and their experience just keeps on getting worse, right? So that's kind of how we need to kind of turn it around. So now, we almost ruined the sales professions, and what happened, and you probably have all seen this in many different companies, is we had to kind of fix it. So if you have negative CAC, you cut headcount, right? So we have a lot of teams now that have less salespeople, less marketers, less everything in the sales team, we are way leaner. When you have tools dependency, we started to consolidate tools. Like, it was crazy. Like, so many companies are still using way too many tools for their sales team because they think that the tools are going to fix the CAC issue, but they are not, right? Or the efficiency issue and whatnot. We used to say that software is eating the world. It's over. Software is full, right? Like, every single vertical has hundreds of competitions. So now you need to be super niche on who you target. You need to be signal-based and you need to be research-based in your outreach. That's what we see working. And obviously, because we saturated every single channel with low-quality noise, you have to be hyper-personalized and customer-centric when you do your outreach, right? And when you are missing quotas, we obviously need to improve efficiency. But because we have smaller teams and you still need to grow, we actually have smaller teams with bigger quotas. So that's kind of the reality check. And what also is a problem is that with all those different tools and stack and processes, we started to have silos. So a big team as well for 25 is to basically remove the silos. So now, how can AI enable salespeople? So you can actually build an email infrastructure with AI to build 1 million emails, book 78 meetings, and get this type of conversion rate. And you can brag about it on LinkedIn as well, right? So that's one way. Fuck no, right? That's not going to help you to deliver more quality noise into the prospect inbox. So the idea here is that you still need to do the fucking work. You need to get to know your customers. You need to be granular and learn so you can describe your customer problem better than they can. And that's really how you can be customer-centric. And that's taking a lot of work, and that's how you can use AI to basically enable your reps. So there is this different approach of AI replacement, AI automations, and we will look at it from the AI enablement point of view, where the idea here is, if you look at your siloed GTM team, you basically have the GTM playbook, your top of the funnel, your middle of the funnel, and the bottom of the funnel, right? So today, the siloed team, they're organized like this. You have the sales enablement and product marketing. They own the most important part of any customer-centric sales playbook. They have the value prop, the ICPs, and the persona. The problem is, all of this super important information, it lives in static documents. Best case scenario, you have a learning management platform or a specific platform for salespeople enablement, which is basically a glorified job box where you can search PDF, right? And then the problem is that for the top of the funnel, your sales and marketing ops are using outdated database that are filtered with generic data points like ZoomInfo, Cognism, and whatnot. But you can only filter by industries, employee size, and country, which has nothing to do with how you do your ICP granularity and how you do your persona. Your persona is not just a job title and so on and so forth, right? So that's kind of the issues. Then you have the SDRs, or let's say the full sales cycle reps, that are using other tools like outreach, Salesloft, and whatnot. But your best reps, they are using ChatGPT. Your best reps, they are Googling to kind of find this extra information that they don't get in Cognism or ZoomInfo. Your best reps, when they are AEs, they also use tools like Gongs, ChatGPT, and whatnot to also kind of access information. But the problem is that all these tools have turned your CRM into a massive data warehouse that's actually not actionable. And reps are overwhelmed by this, and they cannot turn it into anything actionable. And now if you had the headcount, where you have, let's say, a decent size of the team, where you have one person in sales enablement, one marketing ops, and then you have one-to-one headcount in SDRs and AEs, this brings your total tools cost to almost 72K per year. That's just for the new biz of the organization. Then you had the headcount of all the team. Again, only looking at on the new biz, you almost spend 2 million on that part of the team, right? And if they will reach the quota, that will be no problem. But because today only 69% of reps are reaching quotas, you have a 39% attainment rate, and your cost to revenue is almost 1-to-1. And even if you are here, you're actually above the benchmark in the market. Like most of the teams actually have a negative cost to revenue. And if you kind of sum it up, like reps are basically overwhelmed by unactionable data. Most of the reps are not hitting their quota anymore. A mid-sized GTM team is using approximately 20 different tools, and they kind of throwing all of this at this existing problem. Like if you just put AI everywhere, like AI features, AI tools on top, it's not going to solve the issue, right? So the way we look at this is to enable your AI sales team. So sales on enablement and product marketing will basically still own the most important part of the GTM team. But all of their playbooks, all of the ICP and persona will be part of an intelligence that will run other AI agents. So you will have agents that can basically browse the internet. They can research custom signals. So for example, they could open an annual report of a company. They can open the job ads and read the description of the job ads. And they will do this with the understanding of what your company is doing. And they will do this with the understanding of what your personas are doing. And then they can do this for every single company, put them into buckets and whatnot. Then they will work with other agents that can turn all of this into meaningful messaging, right? Into meaningful account plan, into meaningful cold call openers that your reps can basically use. And all of the difference here with the tools part is that agents also have access to tools. The difference is instead of paying access to a database with 32 million companies and hundreds of millions of contacts, they only access the tools when they need access to email and phone numbers. So you only pay on demand when you need access to the data instead of accessing the full database. And the big difference here is that the agents can turn all of that research together with the intelligence about your ICPs and persona into something actionable based on the context that they find. And then all of this research can be pushed to the tools that sales teams are using. And essentially, you can have a much leaner team, right? Because for every single part of the sales team, you can have agents that support them. And you can create more and more and more agents. Like I said, in our team, we have basically one full sales cycle rep, one sales ops, 42 agents. And our full sales cycle reps books 10 meetings per week through cold call. And a little bit of cold email. And then, so when you look at this, because you have less people, you have less tools, your cost per tools is much more optimized in terms of spend. You have a much leaner team as well. And essentially, your quota per AE can be increased because they have way more productivities, and your cost to revenue is much more attractive, right? Because your team is AI enabled, and they can be obviously more productive when they go to market. And that's kind of how we look at it, right? So agents and reps needs to work together. Your GTM team needs to work with agents, not AI features. That's really the difference of how you look at implementing agentic in your GTM. And you don't have any more siloed tools or AI features because your agents and your team are working with the same set of tools, right? And you can save a lot of money on basically those generic databases where you have access to 100 million of companies by using on-demand APIs where they only enrich it with what you need, right? And yeah, so the big difference as well, and that's why we call it the system of context, is instead of having data, you can get the context behind the research because your agents, they work like your best reps and they understand your ICPs on your personas. So that's how we look at it. And again, if you compare both models, it's pretty straightforward, right? With the old model, you will have a cost of revenue that's almost one-to-one. With the new model, you can have much more effective, which is basically 3.4 GTM efficiency. So that's kind of how it works. If you look at the use case one by one, back in the days when we want to build the GTM playbooks, it will take us 1 to 2 weeks to put a playbook together. And it will be a lot of meetings, putting really smart people in one room, documenting everything. With AI, you can do this in minutes or hours, depending on the complexity. When it comes to enabling the team with coaching, it used to take so many hours to book meetings and book coaching sessions with reps. And now this can be done with 1 to 2 weeks. You can basically coach your reps to do role play with AI agents. And all of this happens autonomously, right? When it comes to top of the funnel, top reps will research at least 6 hours per week, one rep. This is completely removed with AI agents. If you build as many custom AI agents as you want for every research point, your reps don't need to do the research anymore, and all the research will be pushed in the CRM. The same happened with the middle of the funnel. You can have this middle of the funnel approach where agents and reps are working together with the research and turn this research into very, very meaningful outreach for cold call or for cold emails, and you remove another 6 hours, right? So your reps are spending more than half of their time on these 2 tasks alone, right? And then when you prepare for a meeting, you will typically, if you have time, open the website of the company, open the LinkedIn profile. You can also use agents that basically turns at least 20 minutes of research into 2 minutes with a copilot that helps you prepare for the meetings. So these are really the use case, but the most important thing is to understand that the way you want to work with agents is very different than software. Because when you install a software, you calibrate your software, you deploy it, you watch your dashboard, and you wait for your ROI. When you work with agents, you need to imagine that you will deploy digital colleagues. And to deploy digital colleagues, you need to calibrate them, you need to deploy them, you get your ROI, but you can actually always improve them. You can always create more agents all the time. And you get this basically exponential ROI, and that's the very big difference. So if you want to implement agentic, you also need to think about how I'm going to transform my team so they can work every day with digital colleagues. And if you're not ready for this, then you're not going to get ROI from AI. You need to be able to work with your colleagues on a weekly basis, like the digital colleagues, they need to work together and so on and so forth, right? So that's really the way we approach AI. And we are still at the very beginning, right? So 24 was just about Copilot. Everybody was like, Copilot, 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 right? And now we start to see a little bit of agentic, but it's still very, 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 kind of foreign language for most of the people out there. And agentic means, again, that you have digital colleagues as part of your team. And what I'm predicting here, and I'm pretty bullish on this, is sales is a two-way street. And again, we are building agentic solutions for salespeople, but buyers are going to get agentic buyers. Because when you think about it, it's a simple use case. You put your specs of what you need to buy, and then you have agents that browse the internet, go and fill up inbound forms, show up in demos, and then come back to you with a table with 200 vendors that are reviewed according to your specs, and you can just decide with which one you want to have a real demo. And today's most of the text that salespeople are using is not ready for agentic. Because when you're going to get agentic buyers, you are going to lose so many deals. Because they are just going to have so many demos, right? And that's also very important to prepare for that era. And when all the teams are going to basically implement this. And today, every single team that we work with is implementing agentic for the first time, is implementing digital colleagues for the first time. So that's also a big shift in the market. And if you want to compare agentic to a Copilot, so all of you have probably used ChatGPT or Cloud or any kind of other kind of system. The problem is, just for you to understand, is when you work with a Copilot, you have one model and you have one context window. So every time you chat with the Copilot, you are building context, right? And the context kind of keep on building. But then you have no collaborative layers with a Copilot. And then you have very limited API integration. When you work with an agentic platform, and that's the way we built our platform, is you have these collaborative layers on top, with all the team can basically work together. And then the context is already built by default. So you already have this intelligence for all the agents that you don't need to create every single time. All the agents understand your ICP, your persona, and your value prop. Then when they start researching the internet, they build a much larger context window, and they have like, this is all the research I've done about the companies. And then they give all of that research to other agents that are like, okay, now I have all of that research, I have the same intelligence, and I'm going to create some really meaningful customer interactions, and I can push this to the CRM. And that's the difference with an agentic platform versus when you work with a Copilot or with ChatGPT. That's kind of what you have built in on what you want to work with the team. And again, the way we see it's developing is you are going to have more and more custom models because you don't need to use an LLM to actually do most of the activities. So that's definitely coming. And something we are coming already is that our customers are basically asking us, I get all of this context in HubSpot, I get all of this context in Salesforce, and now what I want to do really is instead of filtering by the limited filters I have in the CRM, I want to ask my CRM, show me the accounts in my book of business that are impacted by the US tariff. And they cannot do this in HubSpot. And this will actually happen as well outside of the CRMs, and CRMs are basically going to become part of a bigger data lake where everything is connected, but salespeople are actually going to start working with agents outside of the CRM. And obviously the future of sales is not outbound or inbound, it's all-bound. So your marketing teams are going to work with the same agents. If you have really, really good agents that can research companies for your outbound team, they can definitely qualify your best inbound, research your best inbound, and use the same messaging. In the future, you will also use the same intelligence to create landing page on demand, to create materials for the campaigns, and so on and so forth, right? And obviously, what's important is that all of these layers, what you want is that these agents will start talking with the buyer agents in the future. So you don't have salespeople wasting so much time doing demos to agents if there is not a fit, right? And you have agents qualifying each other. I know this sounds like so futuristic, but this is going to happen. And if you don't have a system where an agent can talk to an agent to self-qualify one another, salespeople are just going to show up, talk to agents so many times, and lose a lot of deals. So that's kind of how we look at the future. But the idea here, if you want to simplify it, is an AI-enabled sales team should be able to basically prioritize outreach based on research that is meaningful for the prospect, hyper-personalize every step based on the research, based on the customer-centric playbooks and whatnot, and have that contextualized data in the CRM. So it's actionable, and the reps basically log into Salesforce and HubSpot, and everything is ready to actionate with context, not with just like filters and data, right? And then you can use all of those role play tools as well, inside the platform to basically role play on demand, practice with different personas and whatnot. And the idea here is to basically, instead of going with the volume, go with more quality. Right? So how can I be creating this super niche campaign here because you have this army of AI agents can support the research. And the idea again is that from the prospect side, the experience is getting better because they can really see that you have done your research and you have done this effort for the meaningful outreach, right? So yeah, so that was me. Thank you for listening. And yeah, we have time for some questions if you have any.
Well, thanks for the session. At the beginning, you put one table where you put outreach channels popularity versus time.
Yeah.
Can you tell your prediction about this year, how it will end and how it will go in the next 3 years?
I mean, from what we see, and again, like we book 10 meetings per week with one person. I think we write amazing contextualized, super research, low volume cold emails, and we get really decent reply rate. But 70% of the meetings are still booked through cold call. Cold calling on the phone. Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so what I mean is that you can write really good content. The problem is there is so much noise. How many emails do you delete per day today? Like today alone, I think I deleted 20 emails, right? And that's the problem. Like even if you do all your research, like you need to break through the noise. So I think you need to train a generation of salespeople to relearn that channel, which is not complicated. But our cold call openers are killer because our cold call openers are research based. So for the first 10, 20 seconds, we basically put so much contextualized research in the cold call that people just listen and feel like, okay, this guy just really researched my company, right? And all of the research is contextualized around the pain point. And then we continue with the talk track basically. But if with our cold call opener and our cold call talk track with all the research done by agents, if we have a conversation that's more than 1 minute and it's a fit, we book a meeting. And I predict that again because of all the noise we have on email, on LinkedIn, that's definitely the channel that's going to grow in 25.
First of all, thanks for the presentation. A lot of questions, but maybe the most important one. Sure. How does the journey look like for a typical software, let's say, sales team? Getting from point A, which is I have all these tools, to getting to a more agentic type of sales enablement that you just presented.
Yeah.
And what's the time to value? Because there is investment, right?
No, it's a great question. So again, you need to treat AI agents like digital colleagues, or let's say the way we explain it when we onboard customers is like, this is the most intelligent intern you're ever going to work with. And then you can create so many of them. But imagine tomorrow you can work with that super intelligent intern. Will you hire 20 at the same time or 1 or 2 at the same time, right? And typically that's what we almost refrain of customer to do is like, hey, let's not create 20 agents. Let's create 2 agents, let's focus on 1 outcome, let's create then 2 more and then go step by step. But typically it will take 1 to 2 weeks to kind of calibrate the first one, kind of connect them with the other agents, have an output that you want and start pushing actionable insight to the CRM. Yeah, so the tools, again, it depends how many tools they are locked in with a yearly subscription and whatnot, but typically they will replace across the first year 3 to 5 tools.
Super.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One big round of applause. Excellent. Thank you.